In 1910, Carl Jung, a psychologist, would study behavioral patterns within his patients, and from his foundings, he would categorize his patients from extroverted to introverted. Extroverts being considered people who would rather spend time in a stimulating environment, such as a party, while an introvert is someone who spends their time in less stimulating environments, like being left alone. Now that sounds reasonable until I realized there doesn't not exist a person who just only wants to be left alone in their free time. Humans are by nature social creatures, and as said by the Psychology Today research, it's a bit of an oxymoron to call a person introverted. And over the past few weeks, I have been researching the facts necessary in order to prove that introverts can't exist if someone's basic experiencing a basic human experience. Now, why I believe that to be so is because it's not a distinguishable feature of a person. It is used as a crutch to avoid social situations, and there really only is degrees of extroverts. Now, as I mentioned, introverts can't be real characteristics considering it can't be easily identified. Characteristics in nature are supposed to be distinguishable from people from one another, and yet introvertism is not identifiable like shyness, neuroticism, or agreeableness. And the reason for that is because there's no consensus on what the word even means. Now, while the Myers-Briggs research refers to an introvert as someone who keeps their thoughts to themselves and values deep conversations, the Psychology Today research papers use the Carl Jung definition of an introvert, which is someone who just spends time alone. Now, even the Google definition doesn't have the same explanation for introverts. And this confusion becomes even worse when you realize people identify as an introvert, but don't understand what it even means to be one. Now, I conducted my own research, giving a survey to my classmates, friends, and family members, and from the total of 83 responses, 77.8% of them identified as introverts. Yet in a study conducted by the Psychology Today, they say only 25% of the population are introverts. Now, I will concede that the study I did was simplified sampling, but nonetheless, the survey does meet the conditions in order to find a bell curve and find some sort of similarity between the world population and my research. Yet, considering that identifying introverts, people just use it as to identify their shy or social anxious behavior. Now, identifying as an introverted person, it can be used as a crutch. Being socially anxious or not being able to stare someone in the eyes when you talk to them should not be incorporated as your identity and something that you should wear proudly. Yet people who identify as introverts use it to hide their lack of social skills and avoid meeting new people, as stated in the Myers-Briggs report. Now, someone might say, no, I just like deep talks instead of small talks, or I like to be left alone, or I only want to be around a small group of people. Well, newsflash, people. Everybody in the world is like this. Brett McKay, in his article, makes the claim that introverts say they don't like small talk only as a way to disengage with getting to meet new people. When you meet a new person, you have to meet them on a rapport level first in order to engage in the deep talk with someone. There does not exist a human being that walks up to a stranger and discusses about whether or not lizard people are in the White House or not. But introverts avoid interactions altogether, missing a basic human experience. And they feel okay doing it because they identify as an introvert and it's a part of their identity to not meet the standard we set for talking to people. It should be fundamental. It should not be a fundamental personality to not be able to interact with a human being. And it should not be the norm to have an identity that allows you to not be around human beings and create excuses for yourself, because people that are introverts try to subscribe to themselves as something that's not real. Nobody in the world, as I know of, wants to be forced to not go to any social interactions, and there doesn't exist extreme extroverts either. Now, on the contrary, some may say that during the pandemic, they haven't gone outside for weeks at a time. They may claim that their fine and lack of social interaction was no worry. So that must be some proof of introverts, right? Well, I say not exactly, because in the study done by Begdasio, I think that's how you pronounce it, they showed that people have been getting their social interactions from from TV, substituting that feeling of meeting a new person by seeing a TV show. So no, you're not having alone time
with yourself, literally. You're interacting with people, but you just don't realize it. Now, so what if introverts aren't real? Does that mean that everyone in the world is an extrovert and wants to party and hang out with people like all the time? To that I say no. I just believe that there's degrees of extroverts in the world. The reason why I think that is because the word introvert like perpetuates this feeling of comfort for people to be bad at social interactions. Now, just stating that you're like on the lower spectrum of an extrovert, you could just still be able to like stay at home and like not interact as much, but you still have expectations to hold up well in social interactions, as it should be. But to keep it short, introverts don't exist. Introvertness is not identifiable. It's used as an excuse. So let's just use degrees of extrovertness to identify as and stop identifying as like introverts.